Alright guys, and welcome back to the Don's channel. I am the Donfather and this is hashtag AFL Car Chat. The story that I'm going to do now is about Ben Cousins, an absolutely unbelievable footy player within the AFL. He played for the West Coast Eagles and also had a stint with Richmond Tigers at top level. I won't go too much into his playing career, as that's not what this is all about. I've already tried to record this video. I did about 20 odd minutes. It turned into a rant, so I've decided not to run with that and redo it again. So I'm going to do it short. I'm not going to go into too much details about the playing career. We'll probably focus on the off the field stuff, which is actually a shame considering I want him to be remembered for the football player. But unfortunately in life and in society, people don't do that, do they? So we'll remember him for kind of the off the field issues. Anyway, he captained the West Coast Eagles at 22 years old, a very young age. He went on to the 2005 grand final against Sydney Swans, which they lost at the Eagles, and then 2006 they won it, and that was again against the Swans. He was a Brownlow medalist. 2005 he won the medal. He lost one of his best friends in the game due to unknown circumstances really at the time, and the media had a field day with this. They ran his name through the gutter, really linked him with the death, because Ben Cousins was an addict. He was a drug addict. He was an addict to anything. He was an addict to being the best at the sport. He was an addict to... He doesn't say he was an addict to drink, but his drink led to drugs. So anything he took his hand to that gave him that release, triggered that addictive part of the brain, was dangerous. Substance abuse, whether it was alcohol or drugs, he probably shouldn't touch them. Sport was the only addictive thing that he could do that wasn't going to ruin his name, his legacy, etc. So anything he didn't do in half measures. He threw it into everything, all guns blazing. When he was younger, he could do it. He could play the bit, train as hard as he wants, play as hard as he wants, be absolutely amazing, be one of the best players in the sport, and he could also take as much drugs as he wants. But that has to come to a head at some point. I can't remember the exact year, but his best friend in the sport died, as I said, and this sent him over the edge. This completely ruined him. What a shame. He ends up on another drug binge. This time, I think it was about 5 or 6 days, where he just loses his marbles altogether. He's taking ice, he's taking cocaine, he's taking ecstasy, he's taking any substance he can get his hands on, and he's not doing it in half measures. He's absolutely going full throttle. As he claimed, day 2 was better than day 1, day 3 was better than day 2, day 4 was better than day 3, and so on, until you come to the point where you stop, and then there's the come down, the crash. It's absolutely one of the saddest stories. The documentary link is going to be in this video below. Other interviews I've watched. I did a poll on what do people think of Mike Sheehan. Most people said they liked him. They never commented as to why. I was quite surprised from the short amount of stuff I've seen on him. What ex-players have said about him. His credibility has to come into question. When everything's going great with a player, the headlines write themselves. Fantastic, what a story, young captain does this, wins the Brownlow medal, wins grand finals, absolutely amazing, he's got the world at his feet, his father was an ex-player, that's a golden boy, everything was great. But what the media also did on the flip side of that, they cashed in on his addictions, on his mental health problems. They cashed in. Any headline that was negative, they ran with it. The clickbait titles, oh, you must buy the newspaper, what's Ben Cousins been at now, look at him, he's an absolute disgrace, blah 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 blah. They even linked him to the death of his best friend, which was horrific. They sent him over the edge with that. He ended up in America in rehab. He ended up in America in rehab a couple of times. The true sufferers of the Ben Cousins story has to be the people closest to him, his family. It was heartbreaking, the documentary. I nearly cried myself, to tell you the truth. I do get more emotional in my older age, but it's such a sad story. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction, anything where there's an addiction, it is an illness. This is first and foremost, this is an illness. An addiction is an illness. If somebody's got cancer, if somebody's got heart problems, or problems with their stomach, or whatever, life-threatening illnesses, the media are quick to go, oh, our thoughts and prayers are with them. Why did they not do the same with Ben Cousins? Why did the media not recognise that what he had was an illness? Why did not the sport not recognise that what he had was an illness? They didn't have enough educated people on the topic. I feel that Ben Cousins in some respects was a guinea pig because of this. He's one of the first to really have drug problems at such a high level, high end of the sport. Like, as I said, the world was at his feet in the sport. He was an unbelievable player, to that there's no doubt. One of the best players I've watched highlight reels of. Entertaining as hell, made stuff happen. He was quick, he was fit, he was athletic, he was everything. He was the golden boy, he was good looking, just a complete image of the sport. They cashed in on that, but the media also cashed in on the negativity, and this is where I have the problem with Shane. Some of the things in the documentary between him and the other guy who sits beside him in another interviewing panel that I've seen where Ben Cousins in 2010 took part in, the guy on the left-hand side of Shane, I think he was maybe an ex-player. They've asked questions in the Ben Cousins documentary where he's as honest as hell. He's admitted to addictions. Usually in TV shows and programmes where somebody goes, I'm an addict, I'm a drug addict, they face up to their problems head on. Everyone gives you a round of applause and says, well done, that is so brave to admit that you're addicted to substances. You know what I mean? The weakness is your addiction. The bravery is the admittance. And the fact that he's admitted to everything is so brave. In public eye, he's admitted that he relies heavily on drugs to see him through life. And he can't help it. Instead, they ask questions in the documentary where they go, who is the real Ben Cousins? I'd love to meet the real Ben Cousins. He doesn't even know who he is. They throw things out there like this, and this really got to me. Shane, the smugness of that man. It's no wonder Jacko lost the plot at him. I'm sorry, you watch him all the time, but the credibility as an outsider on the Ben Cousins situation shows me that Shane should not be in a job. He's not educated enough in addictions. He's not educated enough in mental health disorders to sit there and say a guy like this does not know who he is. He'd love to meet him one day. You don't get that right. In 2010, they did meet him. They did sit there and they had an opportunity to dig deep and say the stuff to his face that they have for years upon years said in papers and media outlets that are more than happy to prey on the weakness and the downfall of a man. Parasitical media outlets that prey on big headlines, no matter if it's good or bad, mostly bad, ruin a man. They take the money from when everything's going well, from the big headlines. Oh, Ben Cousins can do no wrong. He's kicked such a sensational kick. Blah, blah, blah. Sells headlines, sells stories, sells newspapers, gets people tuning in. And the same with the AFL reporters. The AFL ex-player, I think, on the left, bothered me somewhat. The guy on the right of I'm going to put the thing in. If I can get the link in, I'll put the link in. On the right was very respectful. He was a big guy, and do you know what? He recognised this man's not well. He's got an illness. You wouldn't call out somebody with cancer or heart failure. What gives them the goddamn right to question somebody's mental health or addictions? They should be saying, well done to you, Ben. Well done for standing up. You're a pioneer here. You've got a chance to change this for the future of the sport, to recognise. And well, one thing you need to take away from this, Ben Cousins says, this is a society problem in Australia. 500,000 people, it is claimed, that are addicted to ice. The addicts aren't the problem. The drug dealers, the people making this drug, are the problem in Australia. This is a government problem. This is a society problem in the country. Ben Cousins isn't your enemy. Ben Cousins is the guy that you should be appreciating and giving a round of applause to for admitting he has addictions. But he cannot say no when he comes across these drugs. He has to take it. Shame on the sport for recognising that. Not recognising that, and the media for cashing in on the negative stories. They sent him over the edge. Time and time again, you will see parasitical press thriving on the misery of others, and it's shameful. I want an honest story. The documentary was an honest story. When they said Ben Cousins, I would like to meet the real Ben Cousins. He doesn't even know who he is. I'm sorry, he knows exactly who he is. He's had to look at himself in the mirror after binges and face up to the shameful stuff that he's done on his time on drugs when he's been at his lowest. He's fell off the wagon again with alcohol and drugs. He's had to face up to the gutter press about him. Time and time and time again, they've thrived on his misery. He's had to face up to the headlines. He's also had lies wrote about him. He's had to listen to and read and know that's complete trash for the media outlets to make money on the Ben Cousins name because of his addictions. They've wrote shit about him. It's absolutely horrendous story. It's a heartbreaking story. I feel for him. I feel for his family. In some respects, I feel for the AFL because their hands were tied in a way. They've got a guy that's on the self-destruct path. They're trying to help him, and time again, he's kind of threw it back in their face. But this is the problem with addictions. They don't deliberately do it. They're addicts. They need support. Honestly, it's a really heartbreaking story. But as I say, they were Sheehan and the guy to his left-hand side in that video, and he was also in the documentary saying they need to meet the real Ben Cousins. That line has sat with me forever. And it will do. You did meet the real Ben Cousins. He stood up in public and said he's an addict. You should be appreciating the fact that he's brave enough to do that, to stand up and say, I've got problems, I need help. They're childlike, nearly, these people. They need your help. They need constant support. They can't help themselves. They're mental health disorders. You would not go to a cancer... the sport wanted assurances that he wasn't going to relapse again. How could he possibly give a relapse? It was one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard in sport. AFL and other teams wanted absolute assurances that he was never going to take drugs again. He could never possibly do that. As a sports star or anyone in any walk of life can't give you that assurance that they're never going to fall off the wagon again and go into drugs or drink. It's impossible. They cannot do it. All they can do is say, I'm going to try and manage it my best. That's the only promise I can do to you. I'm going to work hard, train hard. As long as I'm wearing your colours and etc. I'm going to give you my all when I get on that over. I'm going to give you my all. I promise you that much. And that frame of mind he's in, he's being honest. But he's also being honest when he says, I can't give you that assurance. And they couldn't recognise that. And that there was probably the biggest shame of the AFL, that they couldn't recognise the problems in society and the problems with addiction. But Mike Sheehan is not a credible. In my eyes, that man had the opportunity to sit there and say stuff to Ben Cousins' face, but he never. He squandered like a little child, pandering, nicey questions, licking his backside, basically. This guy's cashed in on Ben Cousins. Everyone on Ben Cousins has cashed in on Ben Cousins, and they've give nothing to the guy back. He's a pioneer for drug addiction in sport. He's a guinea pig. He continuously is going to fall off the wagon in life. I fear he's going to die young. I fear maybe his father's probably going to die because of the problems that he sees his son have. It's a heartbreaking story. There's no question the guy was an unbelievably gifted footy player. And I'm going to say this one thing to you. See, when you've got somebody who's a genius at something, you, whether it's the club, the AFL, the media, who love to cash in on them. If you've got somebody that's a genius at something, you need to learn to live with the genius rather than the genius learn to live with you. That means, basically, because of all the genius that you're loving to watch, they've got the other side to it as well. And that, in Ben Cousins' case, was addiction. He went full throttle at everything. The sport, the drugs, everything. And he's probably going to continuously be that way for the rest of his life until he dies. He will probably die young. I've seen some horror stories in 2019, 2018 about what he's been up to. And what you've got to remember is he's an addict. He's been in and out of jail. But he's ill. It is an illness. It is an illness. But in terms of ice, ice is a horrendous drug. I hope that nobody else in the sport ends up on this drug, but I wouldn't hold my breath, to tell you the truth, given the problem in the country with ice. I read, and somebody in the UK knows the story in Australia, ice. 500,000 people addicted to ice is staggering numbers. That's not a massive population in Australia. To say 500,000 people, that's an epidemic. It's a horrendous drug. It needs tackled full on. These scumbags that are making it need tackled head on. We need to pump loads of money into punishing them, and the money made from the drug busts and all that, and the documentary said, should be pumped back in to help the addicts, because the addicts don't don't ask to be addicted. They can't help it. This is an addictive substance that's been made by lowlives to get people hooked so they can make money. Kind of the same way as the media. Print their great stories about someone, and when it goes wrong, yes, you can almost see the pound signs, the dollar signs, ching 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 in their eyes when they see this fall from grace of Ben Cousins. And it's one of the saddest stories I've ever heard in sport. I have heard very similar stories in the UK with soccer stars, football stars in the UK. It's exactly the same. You've had people tapping into their phones, following their family around, in some cases putting alcohol on their doorstep, knowing that when they open their door they'll see the vodka and they'll drink the vodka because they cannot say no. That's what the media do. The media have set up him time and time again, Ben Cousins. You'll see it in the documentary, man. It's broke my heart for him. What a player. His father, huge respect to his family, what they've had to go through. His father was an Aussie Rules legend too. It's just the saddest story ever. I'm sorry if anybody's offended by my Mike Sheehan things, but as an outsider looking into this sport that I'm starting to fall in love with, and what you've got to remember is I fell in love with the sport. Not the governing bodies, not the media that talk about the sport in its purest form. The young lads who have a dream to be at the top of the sport. Protect them, guys. Protect them. The off the field stuff that comes with the fame of being a legend, the untouchable side of it, where you're winning Brownlow medals at such a young age. You're captain in your club. You've got to remember the rush that must have been for him. And his father said, "Do not give him the captaincy at 22. It'll ruin him." And that was probably the biggest mistake the Eagles made, looking at it, giving him the captaincy. But the story it's an unbelievable story in every aspect. I hope he can manage it. I don't know if he will. I hope he can manage addiction. My thoughts and prayers go to his family. There's people in the media who I've got no respect for now. I watched about 4 straight hours of loads of different stuff, and the same faces popped up and the same heartless comments were being made. As an outsider looking in, I can see it for what it is. They're not got an honest bone in their bodies. They should be sacked. Immediately, they should have been sacked. If they spoke out in this way about cancer or heart disease or anything that anybody else, or heart attacks, people with the heart disease or that sudden heart syndrome in sport, if they spoke out about them and says, "We're not going to give you another deal. Why should you need to give us assurances that you're never going to get cancer again?" They would be sacked on the spot for making those comments and asking that question. So what gave them the right to think they could say to Ben Cousins, "We need you to give us assurances that you are never going to relapse"? It's just a horror story. Anyway, guys, that's my take on Ben Cousins. Fantastic football player. For that, he should be remembered, but that isn't what he's going to be remembered for, unfortunately. Thanks very much for watching the video. Do give me comments. I know you'll probably disagree with me with the Mike Sheehan thing. As an outsider looking in, watching loads of stuff, loads of interviews with this guy and stuff he's said about him, I have to agree with Jacko on that one. That guy's not got I do not feel that guy's got an honest bone in his body. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Look, guys, I love this sport. I'm in love with this sport as well now. It is absolutely amazing. I'll continuously cover it. I hope you stay tuned for more stuff there. I had to cover this story. I simply had to. It's too big not to talk about. And it's just heartbreaking. It's just sad. Thanks for watching, guys. Anyway, I am the Donfather. Don't forget, I'm going to put the documentary link in the bottom below. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's just devastating. Thanks again, guys. Goodbye.